In this video, we're going to talk about coding RNA. We have different kinds of RNA in our bodies. We have non-coding RNA and coding RNA. So we're going to talk about coding RNA before we talk about non-coding RNA. That's the second part of this video. So before we discuss what coding RNA is, we are going to talk about the central dogma of molecular biology. What is the central dogma state? The central dogma just states that DNA will go to mRNA, and then mRNA is going to go to proteins. What is the process that takes us from DNA to mRNA? Is called transcription. And the process that takes us from mRNA to proteins is called translation. So before we talk about the entire process of coding RNAs, we want to talk about the differences between RNA and DNA. So what are the differences, the chemical differences between DNA and RNA? The first difference is really a reference that can be found by the name as well. It's located by the name. You can tell it by the name as well. RNA is a ribonucleic acid, and then we have DNA, which is a deoxyribose nucleic acid. Now, if we look at the structure of these two sugars, and we talked about this in the previous videos, there are two kinds of sugars. We have a ribose sugar and we have a deoxyribose sugar. The ribose sugar is something, really the difference between these two is just notice that the second, just notice this. The difference between these two really just is that the second carbon has a hydroxide for the ribose and the deoxyribose has a hydrogen for the second carbon. That's the only difference. The second difference between RNA and DNA is that RNA contains uracil and not thymine. So remember that uracil and thymine just differ from a very small difference, and they have a very similar structure, and the only difference is a methyl group. That's all. So they're very similar, is what I'm trying to say, but you will never see uracil on DNA, and you will never see thymine on RNA. This is an important difference. Another thing we want to talk about is RNA is generally single-stranded. Sometimes there's an exception for viruses, but RNA is single-stranded, and especially coding RNA, because we have one kind of coding RNA in our bodies, and I want to ask you, what is it called? If you don't know this, don't worry, it's called mRNA. mRNA is copied from DNA through transcription. And this is the message that's going to be used by our bodies to make proteins. And before we talk about any of that, we want to understand the structure, the overall structure, or more like the location of the mRNA. So we know that translation happens in the 5' to the 3' direction. Therefore, everything has to go in this fashion. So if we had a ribosome, let's make a nice circle. We had a ribosome, right? This ribosome is always going to start off by the 5'. It's always going to start off the 5' and go to the 3'. This is how translation works. So this is very important to remember, that translation, or the movement of mRNA, is going to happen in one direction, the 5' to the 3', and that's because that's also highlighted by the components of the mRNA. So the first part of the mRNA contains an untranslated region. It's called the UTR. It's right over here. So the 5' is right next to it. That makes sense because the ribose is going to come in from this direction. And we have something called, also UTR doesn't really add an amino acid to the protein like you would probably think it does. It's really just initiating. It's initiating the entire process of translation. So it plays a very important role. And without these regions, without the promoter regions and the untranslated regions, really translation cannot happen, because all these enzymes won't be able to locate where to start. They won't know where is the start point to translation. And next we go to the open reading frame. And this right here is this entire thing right here is essentially the part that allows amino acids to bond through peptide bonds and cause the formation of polypeptides. And this entire sequence over here is called the open reading frame, And this is the sequence from the start codon to the end codon. This is going to form the entire, the ribosome as it crosses over here is going to start adding the amino acids based on this sequence over here. And then at the end we have the termination stop codon at the 3' end. This is going to signal the amino acid, the ribosome, that you have reached the end of the mRNA and it's time to dissociate yourself, and the entire ribosome will fall off, and so will the mRNA. And that's the magic of the stop codon. The next thing we want to talk about is sisteron. Sisteron is a word that means genes. I just want to highlight that before we go on to the next concept. So when you see the word when you see the word monosistronic, that just means one gene. Mono being one, sisteron being gene. So it just means one protein. So this means that there is only one kind of protein that's going to be synthesized if we had a ribosome read this message, if it's a monosistronic mRNA. So here's an example that we have a ribose that's just reading this entire mRNA. It's producing a protein that's going to be monosistronic as one protein. And this means that, so what does it mean? Here's a question to ask now. What does it mean when an mRNA is polycistronic? So remember, poly means more than one, and cistron means gene. So it just means that the mRNA codes for more than one gene, and hence more than one protein. It could have, so think about it in terms of structure now. We talked about the polycistron having one initiation. We talked about it having one open reading frame. We talked about a termination code as well, or termination codon. And all these sequences, all these three things are repeated multiple times for polycistrons. So this is how it looks like. We have a untranslated region. We have a open reading frame. We have a stop. We have a termination over here, and then this just repeats multiple times depending on how many cistrons you have on that. So mRNA produced. So you will notice that this polycistron is only a thing in prokaryotes. So mRNA production is regular. So prokaryotes are small beings, and they have to respond to the environment really fast, and they don't have too much time for this. Also, we want to think about the location of the prokaryotes. So think about the prokaryote. It doesn't have any internal organelles. It's open plate. It doesn't even have a nucleus. It's all open. Everything is available in the cytoplasm. So therefore, everything can happen all together in a sense, and that's why it's more convenient for prokaryotes to have polycistrons. But when it comes to so we just talked about that right now. So no membrane bound organelles. So it needs to adapt to the changing environment. We talked about that just right now. So however, in eukaryotes, mRNA is more orderly produced, and the reason I'm saying this is because eukaryotes are almost always going to have monocistronic mRNA. And that just means that if you see how eukaryotes are producing their mRNA, it's going to be monocistronic. You're not going to see polycistronic mRNA in DNA, even though we have recently discovered that we do have polycistronic mRNA in DNA, in eukaryotes, but we can't, for the purposes of biology class for IB, AP, or the MCAT, we have to say that it's monocistronic for the time being for eukaryotes. So DNA goes to mRNA and protein. So before mRNA, okay, so there are a lot of reasons why eukaryotes have monocistronic proteins, and just to quickly highlight why, one of the reasons is location. Think about it, because we have internal organelles, we have organelles inside eukaryotes. We can't have transcription and translation at the same time, and also because eukaryotes have a lot of genes, and we want to think about this in a sense, because remember we talked about chromatins and chromosomes. We talked about histines coming together. We have 8 histines, and they wrap around just ignore the color, or actually let me just get the red colors. Let's say the red is the linear DNA. It's going to wrap around. We have a lot of genetic material in our bodies, and because of this, when translation and transcription are happening, we don't always need everything inside the transcribed part of the gene. So, for example, if we have a let's look at this real fast. If this is a gene, right? This is a double strand, or one of the strands of a double strand DNA. We have this gene over here, right? That we don't. The blue gene is something we don't really need, but the red stuff is the stuff we need. Then when transcription happens, all of this has to be transcribed, because you can't have. It's really hard for this to well, this is not. You can't see the color, so well, this, just imagine the blue part is on top of that. The blue part is not required. We don't need it, but it's going to be transcribed as well. But when this is transcribed, the blue part has to be removed physically from the mRNA before it's translated. And because of this, we consider DNA. Well, technically, when DNA is freshly transcribed, we don't call it mRNA. We call it heterogeneous nuclear RNA. This is specifically for the MCAT. This is very important to understand. When we have DNA freshly, transcribing its mRNA, what we call mRNA. It's not mRNA exactly. It's immature mRNA, which we call heterogeneous nuclear RNA. And you should take a note of this. This is very important. This heterogeneous nuclear RNA is now going to be further processed into. It's going to be further processed for it to be mature, so it can be translated, and it's done. It's done through a couple processes, and we're going to talk about that in the next video.